I'm standing in an airport terminal, listening to my 12-year-old daughter sob through the phone. Her best friend's funeral starts in 20 minutes, and her mother, my wife, just locked herself in the bedroom because she's afraid of ghosts. My daughter is in middle school. Until this week, her biggest worries were math tests and soccer practice. Then, the unthinkable happened. One of her closest classmates passed away suddenly. It was her first real experience with death, and it completely broke her. She wasn't sleeping. She barely ate. She just sat on the couch, staring at the wall. I desperately wanted to be there for her, but I was scheduled for a mandatory out-of-state work trip. I begged my boss for PTO, but it was flatly denied. With my wife currently unemployed, my salary is the only thing keeping a roof over our heads. I couldn't risk losing the job. So the responsibility fell to my wife. Now, my wife describes herself as deeply spiritual. In reality, this means she spends hours reading about auras and absolutely refuses to be anywhere near anything related to death. She claims she can sense spirits and avoids funerals like the plague. But we had a deal. She promised me she would step up. That was before my phone rang on Thursday morning, shattering everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The entire middle school had excused the students for the day so they could attend the Mass. It was just a church service. No viewing, no open casket, just a safe space for confused, grieving kids to say goodbye. When we discussed it the night before my flight, my wife was already making excuses. "You know how sensitive my energy is," she told me, sipping her tea while our daughter cried in the next room. "Hospitals and churches, they hold too much trauma. It messes with my vibration." I kept my voice low so our daughter wouldn't hear. I told her this wasn't about her energy, it was about our little girl needing her mother. She sighed, rolling her eyes like I was asking her to do a chore, but she finally agreed. "Fine, I'll take her to the Mass, but I'm not going to the burial site." I breathed a sigh of relief. I thought the crisis was averted. I thought my daughter would have a shoulder to cry on. But I didn't realize my wife was already planning her escape. I flew out Wednesday night. Thursday morning, I'm waiting at my gate for the return flight, checking my watch. The Mass is supposed to start at 10 a.m. At 9:15, my phone vibrates. It's my daughter, and she is absolutely hysterical. She's hyperventilating so hard I can barely understand her words. "Dad," she choked out. "Mom isn't taking me. She won't come out of her room." My blood ran completely cold. My 12-year-old was sitting in the hallway in her black dress, completely alone, while the clock ticked down to her best friend's funeral. I asked her to hand the phone to her mother. She knocked on the bedroom door, crying, begging her mom to come out. Through the phone, I heard my wife's muffled voice from behind the locked door. "I can't do it. The spirits are too heavy today. Tell your father I'm scared." I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. My wife had abandoned our grieving child for a phantom, and right then, the panic faded. The anger took over. I was 2,000 miles away. I couldn't physically break down that bedroom door and force her into the car, but I knew someone who wouldn't tolerate this garbage for a single second. My mother. My mom is a no-nonsense, old-school woman who raised 3 kids on a waitress's salary. She doesn't care about auras or vibrations. She cares about showing up. I told my daughter to pack some tissues and wait by the front window. Then I hung up and dialed my mom's workplace. I explained the situation in under 30 seconds. I told my wife was hiding in her bedroom because she was scared of ghosts and my daughter was missing the funeral. My mom didn't even hesitate. "I'm leaving work right now. Give me 15 minutes. I sat in that airport terminal, staring at the departure board. A part of me knew that sending my mother into that house was going to ignite a massive war. My mom and my wife already had a tense relationship. Sending her in there was like dropping a match into a powder keg. But I pictured my daughter crying alone in her black dress, and I made my choice. Let the house burn. I don't have to wait long for the fallout. About 40 minutes later, I get a text from my mom. It's just a photo of my daughter sitting in the passenger seat of her car, wearing her seatbelt, looking out the window. Underneath it, a simple message: "We are at the church. She is safe." The relief washes over me, but it's immediately followed by a second text from my mom. "I had a few words with your wife on the way out." I don't know exactly what a few words means, but knowing my mother, it isn't a polite suggestion. I board my flight, turn my phone to airplane mode, and spend the next 3 hours in the air, imagining the crater my mother just left in my living room. When we land, I barely have time to turn my phone back on before it starts ringing. It's my wife, and she isn't just crying, she is absolutely furious. I accept the call, step out of the aisle, and bring the phone to my ear. "How could you do this to me?" she screams. "Your mother just barged into our house and humiliated me." I walk down the jet bridge, keeping my voice dead calm. What exactly did she say? My wife sobs loudly. "She called me a pathetic excuse for a mother. She told me it was completely messed up that I couldn't put my child before my imaginary friends. You need to call her right now and make her apologize to me." I stop walking. I stand right in the middle of the crowded terminal. I think about my daughter, crying outside a locked door. I think about my wife, prioritizing her comfort over our child's trauma. She waits for me to agree with her. She expects me to soothe her, to validate her feelings, to play the role of the supportive husband. My mom was right. You failed as a parent today. The silence on the other end of the line is deafening. "What?" she whispers. "You heard me," I say, my voice completely flat. "Our daughter needed a mother today. You chose your fear over her pain. All you had to do was sit in a church. You fucked up. Nobody is apologizing to you." She hung up on me. When I finally got home from the airport, the house was dead silent. My wife had retreated back into her bedroom, refusing to look at me or speak to me. She started sending me long, erratic text messages from the other side of the wall, calling me a huge dick, claiming I was emotionally abusive for not validating her spiritual beliefs, and saying I had turned my family against her. I ignored every single message. I called my mom instead. She told me the funeral was beautiful and that my daughter had cried, but she was surrounded by her friends and felt supported. I asked my mom to keep her for the rest of the day, just so she wouldn't have to come home to the toxic environment we had created. She agreed instantly. I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the locked bedroom door. I know phobias can be paralyzing. I know that to my wife, her fear of the supernatural feels incredibly real. A part of me wonders if letting my mother verbally destroy her and then backing it up so coldly was crossing a line. I basically weaponized my mother against my wife's mental health issue. But then I remember the sound of my 12-year-old daughter hyperventilating because she had to face her friend's casket alone. Phobia or not, when you become a parent, your child's reality has to come before your own. My wife is still demanding an apology, and I'm still refusing to give one. Sometimes the only way to expose a selfish person is to let them hear the ugly truth. But what do you think? Did I go too far by letting my mother rip into her and refusing to apologize? Or did she deserve every word for abandoning our daughter? Let me know in the comments. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.